the robbers who didn't know Kim Kardashian's worth. The morning after the heist, burglar Yunice Abbas went home to catch up on some sleep. When he woke up, his wife was glued to the TV. The headline news of the day was that American reality TV star Kim Kardashian, then 35, had been tied up and robbed at gunpoint in a luxury Paris apartment. All her jewelry had been taken for a sum of about 10 $7.5 million, including the engagement ring her then-husband and rapper Kanye West gifted her, which alone was worth $4 million. Yunice Abbas's wife glared at him. "This has you written all over it?" she grumbled. She was right. The 62-year-old had dabbled in crime his whole life, from petty offences to bank heists. The Kardashian robbery, he later wrote in a memoir, was going to be his last job before retirement. But a series of blunders meant the heist was doomed from the start, and in early 2017, 3 months after the robbery, Abbas and several of his alleged accomplices were arrested. 10 of them will now be appearing in court in Paris in a trial set to last just under 3 weeks. Out of those, 5 are accused of taking part in the heist, and 6 are accused of being accessories to the crime. Most of them were born in the 1950s, leading French media to dub them the Grandpa Robbers. Abbas and a 68-year-old man, Omar Ait Kadache, have confessed. The others have not. One has since passed away, and another, aged 81, will be excused as he is suffering from advanced dementia. By the time the trial starts, almost 9 years will have gone by since the heist. Gun-wielding robbers fled on bikes and on foot. On the night between 2 and 3 October 2016, Abbas and 4 accomplices allegedly staked out Kardashian's discreet suite in Hotel de Portales in the glitzy Madeleine neighborhood in Paris, not far from the Opera and Place Vendôme. At around 03 Usadas local time, they burst into the hotel's entrance hall, dressed as policemen and wielding a gun. They threatened and handcuffed Abderrahmane Ouatiki, an Algerian PhD student who regularly took up shifts as night receptionist, and marched him up to Kardashian's room. She was resting on her bed, tired from days of attending Paris Fashion Week events, when she heard stomping up the stairs. She called out for her sister Courtney and her stylist Stephanie, but when they didn't answer, she panicked. "I knew someone was there to get me," she recalled in an interview with U.S. interviewer David Letterman years later. "You just feel it." Kim dialed 911, but the number, of course, didn't work outside of the U.S. As she was calling her, then security guard Pascal Duvier, who had accompanied her sister to a club, the men burst in, pushed her on the bed, and started shouting. They kept on saying, "The ring! The ring!" And I was so startled that it didn't compute for a minute, she told Letterman. The language barrier meant Ouatiki had to act as an interpreter. They found the ring and stuffed it in a bag along with several other jewels, as well as $1,000 in cash. One of the men grabbed her and pulled her towards him. Because she was wearing a robe with nothing underneath, she thought he was going to assault her, Kim later told Letterman, wiping tears away. But instead, using the technique of saucissonage, or the practice of tying victims up like a saucisson, a salami, the man bound her with zip ties and duct tape and left her in the bathroom. Then he and the rest of the burglars fled on bikes and on foot. Kim freed herself of her restraints, and shortly after, her security guard turned up. Traumatized, Kim gave a statement to French police in the early hours of the morning and flew back to the U.S. by dawn. It wasn't until later that day, when Abbas caught a glimpse of the TV screen his wife was watching, that he understood who their victim was. There were breaking news alerts saying Kim Kardashian had been robbed at gunpoint. That's how important it was, says LA-based entertainment journalist KJ Matthews. Blunders meant heist was doomed from the start. We were so fascinated with her and her family and their rise to fame. When the heist happened, we were so surprised. How could burglars have gotten so close to her? Matthews says. But while mistakes were made in terms of Kardashian's security, serious errors were made on the burglars' side too. They didn't take into account the progress made by police techniques, which can now find micro-traces of DNA anywhere, said Patricia Tourangeau, a crime reporter and the author of Kim and the Grandpa Robbers, a thorough account of the heist and of the lives of its perpetrators. When they dressed up as police, they thought, "That's it? Nobody will be able to recognize us," she adds. But in 2016, Paris was still reeling from the terrorist attacks of the previous year, and there were a huge number of CCTV cameras all around the city, meaning police were able to spot the thieves and see them make off with the jewels. Other details of this story suggest that the thieves' planning was rather haphazard. When fleeing the scene on a bike, Abbas fell, dropping a bag of jewels. The next day, a passerby found a diamond-encrusted necklace and wore it all day at the office before watching the news and realizing where it had come from. Police arrested Abbas and several other people in January 2017 and later confirmed that they had been under surveillance for several weeks after DNA traces left at the scene provided a match with Omar Ait Kadache, also known as Omar the Old. French media published a photo from the police stakeout which shows several of the men having coffee and chatting at a Parisian cafe that winter, just before their arrest. The question that remains, and which will undoubtedly be explored during the trial, is just how the gang got wind of Kardashian's schedule. Court documents seen by the BBC show that both Kardashian and Abbas stated that all the information they needed was posted online by Kardashian herself, whose very career was built on sharing details about her life and movements. But how did the gang know that on the night of 2nd October, Kardashian would be alone in her room without her security guard? The documents indicate police believe Gary Madar, whose brother Michael's firm had provided transportation and taxis to the Kardashians for years, was an accessory to the heist and that he had fed information to the gang about Kim's whereabouts. Mr. Madar was arrested in January 2017. His lawyer, Arthur Verkin, vehemently pushed back against the accusations, telling the BBC that since the start, the case was built on assumptions, theses, theories, but no proof of Madar's involvement was ever found. He added that although the Madar brothers exchanged texts about the Kardashians during Fashion Week, it was just because they were bored, and that when the heist took place, Gary was asleep. Gary's brother Michael is not a defendant. 5 men did this. You don't think one of them was keeping an eye on who was coming and going from her hotel? He said, suggesting that Mr. Madar had only been arrested to prove that the French justice system works.